The fluorescent lights of Boston General's emergency room burned my eyes as I tried to focus on the intake form trembling in my hands. My right wrist throbbed with a pain so intense that I could barely grip the pen, and my vision kept blurring from the tears I refused to let fall in public. "Ma'am, we need you to fill out the emergency contact section," the nurse said, her voice professional but tinged with impatience. It was a Friday night in October, and the ER was chaos, screaming children, someone vomiting in the corner, the constant beeping of machines. I fumbled for my phone with my left hand, my fingers clumsy and uncooperative. The pain medication they'd given me earlier was wearing off, and the burning sensation radiating up my arm told me this was serious. The X-ray technician had muttered something about a complex fracture before hurrying away. "My husband," I managed to say, my voice hoarse. "I need to call my husband." 37 years old, and I felt ancient in that moment. My work clothes, a navy blazer and cream blouse, were rumpled and stained with coffee from when I'd fallen in the office parking garage. The fall itself was a blur. Slick pavement, my heel catching on something, the sickening crack as my hand tried to break my fall. I dialed Ethan's number. It rang once, twice, 5 times. Voicemail. "Ethan, it's me. I'm at Boston General. I fell and I think my wrist is broken badly. They're talking about surgery. Please, I need you here. Please call me back." The nurse took the form from me, scanning it quickly. "Is there someone else we can call? A family member?" "Let me try again," I said, my voice cracking. I called 3 more times. Each time it went to voicemail. Each time, the knot in my stomach tightened. The thing about pain is that it clarifies everything. As I sat there in that plastic chair, clutching my injured wrist to my chest, I couldn't pretend anymore. Couldn't make excuses. For 6 months, Ethan had been distant. Coming home late, his phone always face down on the table, that guilty look in his eyes when I asked about his day. We'd been married for 12 years. 12 years of building a life together in our Brookline apartment, of Sunday morning coffee and crossword puzzles, of planning the family we kept putting off until the timing was right. 12 years, and I was sitting alone in an emergency room, wondering why my husband wouldn't answer his phone. "Mrs. Patterson?" A doctor approached, his expression serious. He was young, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes that had probably seen too many broken things. "I'm Dr. Morrison. I've reviewed your X-rays, and I need to be straight with you. This is a severe distal radius fracture. You're going to need surgical intervention, likely tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. The bone fragments are displaced, and if we don't realign them properly, you could lose significant function in that hand." My mouth went dry. "Surgery? The break is complicated. You'll need pins, possibly a plate. We're talking about a 3 to 6 month recovery, physical therapy, the works." He glanced at his tablet. "You're a financial analyst, correct? This is your dominant hand." I nodded, feeling the world tilt slightly. My job required constant computer work, detailed spreadsheets, client presentations. How was I supposed to work with one hand? "Is your husband on his way?" Dr. Morrison asked gently. I don't know," I whispered. "We need someone here to make decisions with you, especially if we're looking at surgery. Is there anyone else we can contact?" I tried Ethan again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. The cold reality of it sank in slowly, like water seeping through a crack. My husband, the man who'd promised to be there in sickness and in health, wasn't answering. On what might be one of the scariest nights of my life, I was completely alone. "My sister," I finally said, my voice breaking. "I'll call my sister." Nicole answered on the second ring. "Meredith? What's wrong?" The concern in her voice almost broke me. I explained everything in short, choppy sentences, trying to keep my composure. Nicole was 7 years younger than me, a social worker with 2 kids and a mortgage, living 40 minutes away in Quincy. It was late, almost 10 p.m., and asking her to come felt like an imposition. "I'm leaving right now," she said immediately. "Have you called Ethan?" "He's not answering." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Nicole had never said it out loud, but I knew she'd noticed things. The way Ethan had been at her daughter's birthday party last month, distracted, checking his phone constantly, leaving early with some excuse about work. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, Nicole said firmly. "Hang tight, Mare." They moved me to a private bay to wait for the orthopedic surgeon. The curtain provided an illusion of privacy, but I could hear everything. The family in the next bay arguing about insurance, a man groaning in pain, someone crying. Outside the windows, Boston's autumn night was clear and cold, the kind of evening where Ethan and I used to walk along the Charles River, his arm around my shoulders. I tried his number one more time. This time, it only rang twice before going to voicemail, which meant he'd decline the call. He'd actively declined my call. The pain in my chest suddenly had nothing to do with my wrist. I was staring at my phone, trying to process this, when I heard voices outside my curtain. "Is the patient stable?" A woman's voice, slightly breathless. "She's waiting for ortho." "Are you family?" That was my nurse. A pause. "I'm her husband's colleague. He asked me to check on her." My blood turned to ice. The curtain pulled back, and there she stood. Tall, blonde, probably late 20s, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater that somehow looked expensive. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women are, minimal makeup, hair in a messy bun, but glowing with youth and confidence. "Hi," she said, and her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "I'm Vanessa. Ethan sent me to check on you." I stared at her, my broken wrist forgotten for a moment. "Ethan sent you?" "He's dealing with something urgent and couldn't leave, but he was worried about you." She stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. "He wanted me to make sure you're okay, and to let you know he'll be here as soon as he can." Every word she spoke felt like a small detonation in my chest. "What's so urgent?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Vanessa glanced away, uncomfortable. "Work stuff. A client emergency. At 10 p.m. on a Friday night." "Yeah, it's complicated." I looked at her, really looked at her. The way she shifted her weight, the guilty flush creeping up her neck, the fact that she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. And I knew, in that moment, sitting in a hospital bay with a shattered wrist and a shattered life, I knew exactly what complicated meant. "How long?" I asked quietly. "I'm sorry. How long have you been sleeping with my husband?" The color drained from her face. That's not. We're just colleagues." Colleagues don't check on other colleagues' wives in the emergency room at 10 p.m. Colleagues don't look guilty when they say their boss's name. My voice was getting louder, and I didn't care. "So I'll ask again, how long?" Vanessa took a step back. "I think I should go." "For months? 6 months? Was it before or after we celebrated our 12th anniversary? Before or after he told me he loved me and wanted to start trying for a baby?" "Mrs. Patterson, please." "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with rage I didn't know I possessed. "Get out before I have security remove you." She fled, the curtains swaying in her wake. I sat there, trembling, my broken wrist pulsing with each heartbeat, and felt something inside me break that had nothing to do with bones. 12 years. 12 years of trust, of partnership, of believing in us. And he'd sent his mistress to check on me, because he couldn't be bothered to leave her side. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Vanessa said you're waiting for surgery. I'll try to get there when I can. So sorry about this, babe." Sorry about this. Like I'd inconveniently broken my wrist. Like I'd deliberately ruined his Friday night with his mistress. I was still staring at the text when Nicole burst through the curtain, her coat half-buttoned, her hair wild from the wind. "Mare!" She rushed to my side, taking my good hand in hers. "Oh my God, are you okay? Have they said anything about—" She stopped, seeing my face. "What happened?" "He sent her," I whispered. "He sent the woman he's sleeping with to check on me because he couldn't be bothered to leave her." Nicole's expression shifted from concern to pure fury. "That son of a—" "I need a lawyer," I interrupted, my voice suddenly clear and calm. "Before the surgery, before anything else, I need you to help me find a lawyer." "Can you do that?" "Mare, maybe we should focus on your wrist first, and then—" "No." I looked at my sister, and I knew my eyes were hard. I need a lawyer now. Tonight, if possible. Monday morning at the latest. Because I'm going to make sure that when I sign my name to those surgery consent forms, it's the last time I sign anything without protecting myself first. Nicole studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, I know someone. She's tough, really tough. Specializes in high-asset divorces. Good, I said. Because Ethan has no idea what he just did. He thinks he's been so clever, so careful. But what he doesn't know is that my signature is on everything. The apartment deed, the investment accounts, the business partnership papers for his startup. Everything. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ethan. Really sorry I can't be there. This work thing is insane. Love you. I looked at those two words, love you, and felt nothing but cold clarity. He has no idea, I repeated, more to myself than to Nicole. But he's about to find out that choosing her over me tonight was the biggest mistake of his life. Outside, an ambulance siren wailed, and somewhere in the hospital, someone was being saved. But in that moment, in that curtained bay with my broken wrist and my shattered marriage, I wasn't thinking about being saved. I was thinking about survival. And sometimes, survival means knowing exactly when to stop being the person who waits and becomes the person who acts. The surgery happened at 6 a.m. Saturday morning. They'd wanted to do it immediately, but the orthopedic surgeon wasn't available until morning shift, so I spent the night in a hospital room with Nicole sleeping in the chair beside me, refusing to leave. Ethan never showed up. He sent 17 text messages throughout the night, each one a variation of "so sorry, this work crisis is insane," and "I'll be there as soon as I can." By message 12, he'd stopped bothering with the pretense and just sent, "You understand, right? You know how important this investor meeting is." I understood, all right. I understood that while I was lying in a hospital bed, terrified about going under anesthesia, about what my life would look like with pins and plates in my wrist, my husband was with her. The surgery took 3 hours. When I woke up in recovery, my wrist was encased in a heavy cast, my mouth tasted like metal, and Nicole was holding my hand. "How do you feel?" she asked gently. "Like I got hit by a truck." I croaked. "Did he?"
No.
Nicole's jaw tightened. "He didn't come." I closed my eyes, but this time, no tears came. I was past tears. "But I have good news," Nicole continued. "Remember Jenna Foster? From my graduate program? She's a divorce attorney now, one of the best in Boston. I called her last night, and she's willing to meet with you Monday morning. First appointment." "Thank you," I whispered. "Mare, there's something else." Nicole pulled out her phone. "While you were in surgery, I did some digging. You know how I get when I'm worried. I research everything. I looked up Ethan's startup, Nexus Solutions." I nodded weakly. Ethan's company was his baby, a cybersecurity firm he'd founded 5 years ago with his college friend, Ryan. They'd been working on some big contract, something that could change everything according to Ethan. It was why he'd been working such long hours, or so he'd claimed. "Meredith, according to the incorporation documents, you're listed as a 50% owner." I blinked, trying to process this through the medication fog. That can't be right. I'm not involved in the business. "But you signed the papers, didn't you?" When they were setting it up, a memory surfaced. Ethan at our kitchen table 5 years ago, tired but excited, spreading out documents. "Babe, I need you to sign these. It's just standard stuff for the incorporation. Ryan's wife is signing too. It protects us both, makes sure we're covered if anything happens." I'd signed without reading them carefully. I trusted him. God, I trusted him completely. "According to Massachusetts law," Nicole continued, "if you signed as a co-owner, you have equal claim to the business and all its assets. Mare, if this investor deal goes through, and from what I can find online, they're talking about a $20 million valuation, you're entitled to half of Ethan's share." The numbers didn't compute. 20 million. Half of Ethan's share would be $5 million? "That's not possible," I said weakly. "It's very possible. And Mare, there's more. I pulled the deed to your apartment. You're not just on the title, You're the primary owner. Your name is listed first, and according to the purchase documents, 70% of the down payment came from your inheritance when Grandma Patricia died. My grandmother had left me $150,000 when I was 28. Ethan and I had used it to buy our Brookline apartment, a 2-bedroom in a building we could never have afforded otherwise. But I'd always thought of it as our apartment, not mine. Nicole, what are you saying? My sister looked at me with fierce determination. I'm saying that Ethan thinks he holds all the cards. He thinks he can do whatever he wants because you'll just accept it. But legally, financially, you're in a much stronger position than he realizes. And when you meet with Jenna on Monday, you need to come prepared with every document you can find. They kept me in the hospital until Sunday afternoon. Standard procedure after orthopedic surgery, they said, to monitor for complications. The pain was manageable with medication, but the reality of my situation was setting in. 6 months minimum before full use of my hand. Probably longer. Physical therapy 3 times a week. No typing, no driving, no independent living for at least a few weeks. Ethan finally showed up Sunday morning, carrying coffee and bagels and an expression of practiced concern. "Baby, I'm so sorry," he said, setting the food down and reaching for my good hand. The investor meeting ran so late, and then I had to deal with Ryan, and the whole thing was just a nightmare. But I'm here now. How are you feeling? I looked at him, really looked at him, maybe for the first time in months. Ethan was 41, still handsome in that all-American way with his sandy hair and blue eyes, his gym-toned body. He was wearing what I called his casual expensive outfit, designer jeans, a cashmere sweater, the watch I'd given him for his 40th birthday. He looked like a man who'd slept well, who hadn't spent the night on a hospital chair, who definitely hadn't been agonizing over his wife's surgery. "Where were you?" I asked calmly. "I told you, the investor meeting." "On a Friday night? At 10 p.m. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "It ran late. You know how these Silicon Valley types are. They wanted to see everything, go through all the numbers. It was brutal. And you couldn't leave for even an hour? To be here while I was in surgery. Meredith, this deal is everything. It's what we've been working toward for 5 years. Ryan was there, the investors were there. I couldn't just bail. But you could send Vanessa to check on me." His face went blank. "What?" "Your colleague, Vanessa. The one you sent to the ER on Friday night. Remember?" I watched him calculate, watched him decide whether to keep lying. "She was in the area. I thought it would be nice for you to have someone there until Nicole arrived. She's very pretty," I said conversationally. "Young too. Late 20s. Meredith, if you're implying..." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You sent your mistress to check on me while I waited to find out if I'd need surgery. You chose spending time with her over being here for your wife. Those are facts." Ethan stood up, his coffee forgotten. "You're being ridiculous. The pain medication must be making you paranoid." "Paranoid," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" "Vanessa is my employee. That's it. She's been helping with investor presentations because she has an MBA from Wharton and she's brilliant at this stuff. There's nothing else going on." The ease with which he lied was fascinating. I could see it in his eyes. He actually believed he could convince me. 12 years of marriage, and he thought I was too stupid or too dependent to see the truth. "Okay," I said simply. He blinked, thrown by my easy acceptance. "Okay, you're right. I'm probably just emotional from the surgery and everything. I'm sorry for accusing you." Confusion flickered across his face, followed by relief. "It's okay, baby. This has been traumatic for you. I get it. I'm sorry too. Sorry I wasn't here like I should have been. I promise I'll make it up to you." He leaned down to kiss my forehead, and I let him. I even managed a small smile. "When do you get released?" he asked. "This afternoon. Nicole is coming to pick me up." "I can do it," he offered, but without much enthusiasm. "No, it's fine. She's already planned to help me get settled at home. You probably have work stuff anyway." "Well, actually, yeah. I need to finalize some things with the investors. But I'll be home for dinner. I'll pick up Thai food from that place you like." "That sounds perfect." He kissed me again and left, looking pleased with himself. I watched him go, his confident stride, the way he checked his phone the moment he stepped into the hallway. Nicole arrived 5 minutes later and found me sitting up in bed, staring at the wall. "I heard him in the hallway," she said carefully. "You okay?" "He thinks I believe him," I said quietly. "He actually thinks I'm stupid enough to believe that Vanessa is just his employee. What are you going to do?" I looked at my sister, at her concerned face, and felt something solidify inside me. For 12 years, I'd been Meredith Patterson, devoted wife, supporter of Ethan's dreams, the woman who made herself smaller so he could shine brighter. I deferred my own career ambitions, turned down a promotion that would have required travel because Ethan said it would be too disruptive to our marriage, even delayed having children because he kept saying, "Not yet, not until the business is stable." And now, lying in a hospital bed with a broken wrist and a broken marriage, I realized I'd been breaking myself for years. Piece by piece. Compromise by compromise. "I'm going to meet with Jenna tomorrow," I said. "And I'm going to find out exactly what I'm entitled to. Then I'm going to make a decision about my future based on facts, not feelings." Nicole smiled, and there was something fierce in it. That's my sister. They discharged me at 3 p.m. with a prescription for pain medication, instructions for wound care, and a follow-up appointment in 2 weeks. Nicole drove me home to the Brookline apartment, helped me get settled on the couch, and made sure I had water, snacks, and my phone charger within reach of my good hand. "I can stay tonight if you want," she offered. "No, you've done enough. Go home to your family." "I'll be fine. Call me if you need anything." "And Mare, tomorrow's meeting with Jenna? It's going to change everything. Be ready for that." After she left, I sat in the quiet apartment and looked around at the life I'd built. The couch Ethan and I had picked out together. The photos on the walls from our honeymoon in Italy. The bookshelf filled with both our books, our lives intermingled page by page. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Meeting running late. Might not make dinner. Sorry." I wasn't surprised. I was beyond surprise. Instead, I opened my laptop with my one good hand and started a document. Slowly, painstakingly, I began listing everything I knew about our finances. Brookline apartment, valued at approximately $850,000. My inheritance contribution, $150,000, 70% of down payment. Joint savings account, approximately $45,000. My 401k, approximately $180,000. Ethan's 401k, approximately $90,000. Nexus Solutions ownership, 50% per incorporation documents. Pending investor deal, $20 million valuation. Then I started on what I didn't know. Other bank accounts? Investment portfolios I wasn't aware of? Company assets? Debts or liabilities? It took me 2 hours with one hand, but when I was done, I had a picture of my marriage that was very different from what I'd thought. On paper, I wasn't the dependent spouse grateful for Ethan's success. I was his equal partner, maybe even his primary asset. Ethan came home at 11 p.m., reeking of perfume that definitely wasn't mine. He claimed he'd grabbed dinner with Ryan and the investors. He said he was exhausted. He kissed my cheek and went to shower, and when he came to bed, he fell asleep immediately. I lay awake, my wrist throbbing despite the pain medication, and thought about signatures. About all the times I'd signed my name without really understanding what it meant. The mortgage papers, the business incorporation, the joint accounts. My signature had built this life. And now my signature was going to be what either saved it or ended it. Ethan had chosen another woman over me when I needed him most. He'd show me exactly where I ranked in his priorities. Now it was my turn to show him the cost of that choice. Jenna Foster's office was in a sleek high-rise in downtown Boston, all glass and steel with a view of the harbor. Nicole had taken a personal day to drive me there Monday morning, and we sat in the reception area surrounded by abstract art and the quiet hum of expensive air conditioning. "Ms. Patterson?" A woman in her early 50s emerged from the hallway. She wore a charcoal suit that screamed power and confidence, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob. "I'm Jenna Foster." Please come in. Her office was immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windows, a massive desk, leather chairs that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She gestured for me to sit, and her eyes went immediately to my cast. "Your sister tells me you've had quite a weekend," she said, settling into her chair. "Before we begin, I want you to understand that everything we discuss here is protected by attorney-client privilege. You can be completely honest with me. In fact, I need you to be." I nodded, suddenly nervous. "Now, tell me everything. Start from the beginning." So, I did. I told her about Friday night, about Ethan not answering his phone, about Vanessa showing up at the hospital. I told her about the 6 months of distance, the late nights, the lies that I'd been too afraid or too trusting to acknowledge. I told her about him finally showing up Sunday morning, still lying, still treating me like I was too stupid to see the truth. Jenna listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and studied me with sharp, assessing eyes. "How long have you been married?" 12 years. "Children?"
No.
Ethan kept saying we should wait until the business was more stable. "Employment status?" "For both of you." "I'm a senior financial analyst at Berkshire Financial Group. I've been there 9 years. Salary is $140,000 plus bonuses." Ethan runs Nexus Solutions, his cybersecurity startup. He takes a modest salary, maybe $80,000, but most of the company's profits get reinvested. Jenna's eyebrow rose slightly. "You out-earn your husband?" "Significantly. I've been the primary breadwinner for our entire marriage. Ethan's company was bootstrapped. We've been living on my salary and bonuses while building up the business." "Tell me about this business. Your sister mentioned you're listed as an owner?" I pulled out the folder Nicole had helped me prepare, copies of the incorporation documents, the partnership agreement, everything I could find in our home office over the weekend while Ethan was at work. Jenna reviewed the papers, and I watched her expression shift from professional interest to something sharper. "Mrs. Patterson, are you aware that you're not just a co-owner on paper? According to this partnership agreement, you have equal voting rights and equal claim to all business assets and revenues. Did your husband explain this to you when you signed?" "He said it was standard paperwork. For protection. That Ryan's wife was signing the same thing." "Did you have independent legal counsel review these documents before signing?"
No.
I trusted him. Jenna set down the papers. "Here's what I see. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, which means in a divorce, assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally, but fairly based on various factors. However, in your case, you have several significant advantages." She ticked them off on her fingers. 1. You've been the primary earner throughout the marriage. 2. You contributed the majority of the down payment for your home from your inheritance. 3. You're a 50% owner of a business that's currently seeking a significant investment. 4. You have documentation of his infidelity, including witness testimony from hospital staff about his mistress visiting you. I felt my stomach drop. "So, what does that mean?" "It means that if you decide to divorce, you're in an extraordinarily strong position. But Meredith, may I call you Meredith? I need to ask you something important." "What do you want?" The question caught me off guard. I don't know. "Do you want to save your marriage? Because if you do, I can recommend some excellent marriage counselors." "Do you want revenge? Because if you do, I need to talk you out of that. Revenge is expensive and emotionally draining. Or do you want to protect yourself and move forward with dignity and financial security?" I thought about Ethan lying to my face in the hospital. I thought about him sending Vanessa to check on me. I thought about 12 years of compromise and sacrifice and trust, and what I'd gotten in return. "I want to protect myself," I said quietly. "I want to make sure that if this marriage is over, I don't end up devastated and broke. I want to take back the power I gave away." Jenna smiled, and it wasn't entirely friendly. "Good. That I can work with. Here's what we're going to do." She pulled out a fresh legal pad and began writing. "First, we're going to secure every document you can find. Bank statements, tax returns, business records, emails, text messages, everything. Can you access your husband's computer or phone? I know his computer password. His phone, maybe. He's been more careful with it lately. Don't do anything that could be construed as illegal, but if you have legitimate access to share devices or accounts, use it. Download everything. We need a complete picture of your finances. Second, we're going to have you see a private investigator. I work with someone excellent, discreet, thorough. If your husband is having an affair, we need documentation. Photos, timestamps, locations. Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state, so infidelity doesn't technically matter for the divorce itself, but it matters for everything else. It affects credibility, it affects negotiations, and it affects how a judge views his claims. My hands were shaking. This was real. This was actually happening. Third, we're going to protect your assets immediately. I'm going to draft a letter informing your husband that you're aware of the affair and that you're taking steps to protect yourself financially. We're going to suggest he move out of the marital home. And we're going to freeze any joint accounts to prevent dissipation of assets. Will that make him angry? Absolutely. But Meredith, he's already made his choice. He chose her over you when you needed him most. Now we're just making sure that choice has consequences. I thought about Ethan's face when he'd lied to me yesterday. The easy confidence. The certainty that I'd believe him. What about his business? The investor deal? Jenna's smile widened.
Yes.
The $20 million valuation. That's where things get very interesting. You see, as a 50% owner, you have rights. You can't be excluded from major business decisions. And a $20 million investment deal? That's definitely a major business decision.
I don't understand.
The investor deal probably includes terms about ownership structure, profit distribution, future equity. If your husband is planning to divorce you, he might be trying to structure that deal in a way that minimizes your claim. But if we move quickly, we can ensure that doesn't happen. We can insist on your rightful position as a co-owner being respected in all negotiations. The implications were staggering. You mean I could block the deal? You could. But I don't recommend that. It makes you look vindictive and it could devalue the business, which ultimately hurts you too. What I recommend is that we assert your ownership rights, demand transparency in all negotiations, and ensure that any deal terms protect your 50% stake. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at a drop that both terrified and exhilarated me. How much will this cost? I asked. Your services? My retainer is $15,000 and my hourly rate is $500. But Meredith, considering your husband's potential assets and the business valuation, this is an investment in your future. I've handled cases like this before. If we do this right, you'll walk away with significantly more than enough to cover my fees. I thought about my savings account, about the money I'd carefully set aside over the years, never touching it because Ethan said we needed to be financially responsible. I'll pay your retainer today, I said. Tell me what to do. Over the next 2 hours, Jenna outlined a strategy that was both practical and ruthless. I was to continue acting normally at home while gathering evidence. The private investigator would start surveillance immediately. Jenna would draft a formal letter asserting my ownership rights in Nexus Solutions and demanding access to all business records related to the investor deal. One more thing, Jenna said as our meeting ended. Your wrist, your injury and surgery, those medical bills are going to be significant. Make sure everything is documented. In an equitable distribution case, we can argue that you incurred these expenses during the marriage and that your husband's negligence contributed to your emotional distress. It's another factor in our favor. As Nicole drove me home, my mind was reeling. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know. I feel like I just declared war. No, Nicole said firmly. He declared war when he sent his mistress to check on you in the ER. You're just finally fighting back. I spent that afternoon at home, my laptop open one-handed, going through years of files. Tax returns, bank statements, credit card bills. I found things I'd never noticed before, charges to restaurants I'd never been to, weekend trips that Ethan claimed were business conferences, cash withdrawals that seemed excessive. I found emails too. I hesitated before accessing Ethan's computer, It felt like a violation, but Jenna's words echoed in my mind. If you have legitimate access to shared devices, use it. The computer was in our home office. I knew his password because he'd never bothered to hide it from me. Why would he? I was his trusting wife. I opened his email. It took me less than 10 minutes to find the truth, and it was worse than I'd imagined. There were emails to Vanessa going back 8 months. Not just flirtation or inappropriate comments, full-blown affair correspondence. Hotel reservations. Plans to meet during business trips. Discussions about leaving me when the timing is right. One email from 3 months ago made my blood run cold. Once the investor deal closes, I'll have enough to start fresh. We can get a place together, maybe in Cambridge near the office. And won't fight the divorce. She never fights about anything. She'll just accept it like she accepts everything else. And with the way I've structured the new business agreement, my share will be protected. Ryan knows what's up, and he's on board with keeping things quiet until after the deal. I sat there, reading that email over and over. And won't fight. She never fights about anything. He was right. The old Meredith wouldn't have fought. The old Meredith would have cried, accepted his excuses, maybe even blamed herself for not being enough. But the woman sitting here with pins in her wrist, who'd spent a terrifying night alone in a hospital while her husband was with his mistress, who'd looked her sister's divorce attorney in the eye and said, "I want to protect myself." She was someone different. I screenshotted everything. Every email, every text thread I could find, every receipt. I created a hidden folder on our shared cloud drive and uploaded it all, then emailed copies to Nicole's personal account as backup. Then I found the business documents. Ethan had been sloppy. Or maybe he'd just been confident that I'd never look. There were multiple drafts of a revised partnership agreement, dated from the past 2 months. In the new version, his ownership stake increased to 75%, with my share reduced to 25%. The justification cited active management contribution versus passive investment. My hands were shaking as I photographed every page. There were also emails with the investors Quantum Ventures, a Silicon Valley firm. The deal terms were complex, but I understood enough from my financial background to see what was happening. The $20 million valuation would give Ethan and Ryan $8 million each in the initial buyout, with the remaining equity distributed according to the revised ownership structure. If Ethan's revised agreement went through, he'd get $6 million of that $8 million share. I'd get $2 million if I was lucky. But if the original ownership agreement held, the one I'd signed 5 years ago, we'd each get $4 million. That was a $2 million difference. $2 million he was trying to steal from me while sleeping with another woman and lying to my face. I was still staring at the documents when I heard the front door open. "Babe." Ethan's voice called out. "You home?" I quickly closed all the windows on his computer and moved back to the living room, settling on the couch with my cast propped on a pillow. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. "In here," I called, keeping my voice normal. He appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes, looking tired but pleased with himself.
Hey.
"How was your day? How's the wrist?" "Painful," I said honestly, "but manageable." Good. He loosened his tie, that unconscious gesture that used to make me feel warm and domestic. Now it just made me sick. "Listen, I have some good news. The investor deal is moving forward faster than we thought. They want to close within 3 weeks. "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. 3 weeks meant he couldn't hide anything. 3 weeks meant we could move quickly. Yeah, it's crazy. Ryan and I have been killing ourselves getting everything ready. He sat down next to me, his thigh touching mine. "This is going to change everything for us, Mare. We're talking about real money. We can finally start that family you've been wanting. Maybe get a bigger place, somewhere with a yard." The lies flowed so easily from his mouth. We could start that family. As if he hadn't been planning to leave me. As if he hadn't told Vanessa he'd have enough money to start fresh. "That sounds amazing," I said, matching his tone. "When do you think we'll see the money?" "Probably 30 to 60 days after closing. There's some legal stuff, paperwork, all the boring business details." But Mayor, we're talking about enough money to be comfortable for the rest of our lives. How much exactly? He hesitated and I saw him calculate. It's complicated. There are different tranches, equity stakes, earnouts. But my share should be somewhere around 6 million. 6 million. Not 8. Not the 4 million I was actually entitled to if he honored our original agreement. 6 million based on the fraudulent revised partnership papers. Wow, I said. That's incredible, Ethan. You've worked so hard for this. He smiled, and for a moment, I saw the man I'd married. Or maybe I saw the illusion I'd believed in for 12 years. We've worked hard, he corrected, taking my good hand. You've supported me through all of this. The late nights, the stress, the uncertainty. I couldn't have done it without you. I looked at our joined hands and wondered if he could feel how much I wanted to pull away. I'm proud of you, I said instead. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I lay awake making calculations. If the deal closed in 3 weeks, that gave me very little time. I needed to move fast, but I also needed to be smart. Tuesday morning, while Ethan was in the shower, I texted Jenna. Found evidence. Lots of it. Can we meet today? Her response came within minutes. 2 p.m. My office. Bring everything. I called in sick to work, which wasn't hard. I was legitimately recovering from surgery, and my boss had been understanding. Nicole picked me up at 1:30, and we drove back downtown to Jenna's office. This time, Jenna wasn't alone. A man in his 60s sat in one of the leather chairs, distinguished-looking with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes behind rimless glasses. Meredith, this is Charles Brennan. He's a forensic accountant specializing in business valuations and asset tracing. Given what you found, I thought we needed his expertise. I spent the next 3 hours going through everything. Charles took copious notes, asking detailed questions about Nexus Solutions' financial structure, the investor deal terms, and the timeline of events. This revised partnership agreement, he said, tapping the papers I'd printed. It's fraudulent. The original agreement requires unanimous consent for any ownership modifications. Your husband can't unilaterally change the terms. Can he claim I agreed to it somehow? I asked. Did you sign anything recently? Any documents he asked you to review? I thought back over the past few months. No. He's been keeping me away from business stuff lately. Said it was boring, and I didn't need to worry about it. Jenna and Charles exchanged a look. Here's what I think is happening, Charles said. Your husband knows the original agreement gives you 50%. He's trying to present the investors with a revised structure that reduces your stake, probably claiming you agreed to it verbally or that you were always just a passive investor. Once the deal closes and the money is distributed according to the fraudulent agreement, it becomes much harder to claw it back. But I have the original documents, I said. Doesn't that prove my ownership? Absolutely. But litigation is expensive and time-consuming. Your husband is probably gambling that even if you fight it, the legal battle will be costly enough that you'll eventually settle for less than you're owed. It's a calculated risk on his part. Jenna leaned forward. Which is why we're not going to let the deal close under false pretenses. Meredith, I need your permission to take aggressive action. We're going to file an emergency motion with the court seeking an injunction on the business deal until your ownership stake is properly recognized. We're also going to send a letter to Quantum Ventures informing them of the ownership dispute. My stomach dropped. Won't that kill the deal? It might delay it, Jenna admitted. But it's the only way to protect your interests. If we let the deal close with the fraudulent agreement in place, we're playing catch-up. This way, we force everyone to the table now. Ethan will know I'm onto him.
Yes.
Which means we need to move on everything else simultaneously. The separation agreement, securing the marital home, documenting the affair. We go all in right now. I thought about that email, and won't fight. She never fights about anything. Do it, I said. File everything. Charles cleared his throat. There's one more thing you should know. I did some preliminary research into Nexus Solutions financial records, public filings, tax documents, that sort of thing. Your husband has been taking a modest salary, as you mentioned, but the company has significant retained earnings. We're talking about at least $2 million in cash reserves that should be part of the marital estate. The numbers kept getting bigger, the betrayal deeper. How long before Ethan knows we've filed? I asked Jenna. The court will serve him within 24 to 48 hours. The letter to the investors will arrive tomorrow via courier. So I have maybe one day before everything explodes. Probably less. These things have a way of moving quickly once they start. Meredith, I need to ask, do you feel safe at home with your husband? I thought about Ethan. Angry, definitely. Volatile? I didn't think so. But then again, I never thought he'd cheat on me either. I think so. He's never been violent. Nevertheless, I want you to have an exit plan. Keep your phone charged, have Nicole on speed dial, and if at any point you feel threatened, you leave immediately and call the police. Understood. I nodded, feeling the weight of what was coming. That night was surreal. Ethan came home late again, smelling of perfume again, lying again. He kissed my cheek, asked about my wrist, and said he had more meetings tomorrow with the investors, finalizing details, crossing T's, dotting I's. I made dinner with my one good hand, pasta, his favorite, and we ate together like we had 1,000 times before. He talked about the future, about the beach house we could buy on the Cape, about maybe taking a year off to travel once the deal closed. Every word was a knife. You seem quiet, he said eventually. You okay? Just tired. The pain medication makes me foggy. Well, get some rest. Big day tomorrow. The investors want to meet with me and Ryan to go over final terms. He smiled, that confident smile that used to make me feel secure. By this time next month, we're going to be millionaires, babe. Everything's finally coming together. I smiled back and said nothing. Wednesday morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing. A text from Jenna, sent at 6 a.m. Motion filed. Letter sent to Quantum Ventures. Court date set for Friday morning. Call me when you're awake. My hands were shaking as I got out of bed. Ethan was already in the shower, humming something cheerful and off-key. I called Jenna from the kitchen, my voice low. The letter was delivered to Quantum Ventures General Counsel at 8 a.m. California time, she said without preamble. That's 11 a.m. our time. The motion was filed with the court at 8:30 a.m. and is being served to your husband's business address this morning. Meredith, by noon, your husband is going to know everything. Okay, I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. What do I do? Stay calm. Don't engage if he tries to confront you. Don't sign anything he brings home. Don't discuss the case without me present. And Meredith? Don't apologize. You have nothing to apologize for. Ethan emerged from the bedroom 20 minutes later, dressed in his best suit, the navy one I'd helped him pick out for important meetings.
He was checking his phone, smiling at something.
Big day, he said again. Wish me luck. Good luck, I said, and I meant it. He was going to need it. He kissed me goodbye, and I watched from the window as he got into his car and drove away, completely unaware that his carefully constructed lies were about to collapse around him. I called Nicole. It's happening. By lunchtime, he'll know.
Where are you?
Do you want me to come over?
No.
I need to do this part alone. But can you be ready in case I need to leave quickly? I'm packing a bag for you right now. The moment you call, I'm there. I spent the morning in a strange, suspended state. I couldn't focus on anything. I tried to watch TV, but the words didn't register. I tried to read, but the sentences blurred together. Mostly, I just sat on the couch, my cast heavy on my lap, waiting. The call came at 11:47 a.m. Ethan's name flashed on my phone screen. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times before answering. Hello. What the hell did you do? His voice was pure fury, all pretense of civility gone. What the hell did you do, Meredith? I don't know what you're. Don't play stupid. The investors just called. They received a letter from some lawyer claiming there's an ownership dispute, that you're blocking the deal. Are you insane? I took a breath, and Jenna's words steadied me. Don't apologize. You have nothing to apologize for. I'm not blocking anything, I said calmly. I'm simply asserting my legal rights as a 50% owner of Nexus Solutions. You're not a 50% owner. You signed papers. You're a passive investor at best. I have the original incorporation documents that say otherwise. The ones you asked me to sign 5 years ago. Silence. Then, Meredith, what's going on? Why are you doing this? You know exactly why. No, I don't. I'm trying to secure our future, and you're sabotaging it. Do you have any idea what you've done? The investors are threatening to walk. Years of work, gone because you decided to have some kind of breakdown. I'm not having a breakdown, Ethan. I'm protecting myself. From what? From me? I'm your husband. Are you? I asked quietly. Because husbands don't send their mistresses to check on their wives in the emergency room. Another silence, longer this time. I'm coming home, he said finally. We need to talk about this.
No.
If you want to talk, we do it with lawyers present. Lawyers? Meredith, Jesus Christ, what has gotten into you? Clarity, I said. For the first time in 12 years, I have complete clarity about who you are and what this marriage really is. I hung up before he could respond. My phone immediately started ringing again. I declined the call. It rang again.
Declined.
On the third call, I texted, "Stop calling me. Any communication needs to go through my attorney." Then I blocked his number. I sat there in the quiet apartment, my heart racing, and felt something like liberation. For 12 years, I'd been afraid of conflict, afraid of making waves, afraid of being difficult. I'd signed what he told me to sign, believed what he told me to believe, made myself smaller and smaller to accommodate his growing ambitions. Now, finally, I was taking up space. My phone rang again, Nicole this time. Are you okay? What happened? I told her everything. Oh my God, Mare. You're a badass. I laughed, surprising myself. I don't feel like a badass. I feel terrified. That's what makes you brave. Doing it even though you're terrified.
She paused.
Do you think he'll come home? Probably. But I'm not leaving. This is my home. My name is on the deed. I'm coming over anyway. You shouldn't be alone. By the time Nicole arrived 20 minutes later, I'd received 14 text messages from Ethan, sent before I blocked him, ranging from angry to pleading to confused. I'd also received a call from Ryan, Ethan's business partner, which I didn't answer. And I'd received an email from Quantum Ventures legal counsel, copied to Jenna, requesting a meeting to discuss the ownership structure concerns before proceeding with the investment deal. They're taking you seriously, Nicole said, reading over my shoulder. That's good, right? That's very good. It means they can't just ignore me and move forward. We were still reading the email when we heard the front door open. Ethan walked in looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 3 hours. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, his face flushed with anger and stress. He stopped when he saw Nicole. This is a private conversation, he said tightly.
Nicole is staying, I said.
If you want to talk to me, she stays. He looked between us, jaw clenched.
Fine.
Meredith, I need you to call your lawyer and tell her this was all a misunderstanding. Tell her you made a mistake.
No.
No? That's it? Just no. I didn't make a mistake, Ethan.
You did.
Multiple mistakes, actually. Starting about 8 months ago with Vanessa. His face went pale. I don't know what you think you know. I know everything. The emails. The hotel reservations. The plans to leave me once the investor money came through. The revised partnership agreement that would steal $2 million from me. I know all of it. He sank onto the chair across from me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Let me explain, he said quietly. There's nothing to explain. Meredith, please. Just listen. Vanessa, yes, we got close. Too close. But it's not serious. It's just she understood the business pressure, the stress. You were always so focused on your own career, your own stuff. Don't, I said sharply. Don't you dare blame me for your choices. I'm not blaming you. I'm trying to explain that people make mistakes when they're under pressure. You didn't make a mistake, I said, and my voice was cold. You made a series of calculated choices. You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie to me for 8 months. You chose to not come to the hospital when I needed you. You chose to try to defraud me out of millions of dollars. Those weren't mistakes, Ethan. That was who you decided to be. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I didn't recognize myself either. What do you want? He asked finally. You want me to grovel?
To beg? Fine. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry, Meredith. I screwed up. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through this. Just please call off your lawyer and let the deal go through.
Why?
So you can leave me the moment the money hits your account.
No.
I'm not going to leave you. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot of his email to Vanessa. The one about starting fresh once the deal closed. I held it up so he could see it. Oh, he said quietly.
Yeah.
Oh. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, a car alarm went off, its shrill beeping filling the space between us. What happens now? Ethan asked, and he sounded broken. What do you want to happen? I thought about that question. What did I want? I wanted the last 8 months to not have happened. I wanted the man I'd married to be real instead of an illusion. I wanted to not be sitting here with pins in my wrist and a broken heart, having this conversation. But those weren't options. I want what's legally mine, I said finally. I want my 50% of Nexus Solutions recognized and protected. I want an honest accounting of all marital assets. And I want you to move out of this apartment. Meredith. I'm done, Ethan. We're done. Whether the divorce happens now or later, this marriage is over. You ended it the moment you chose her over me. I'm just making it official. He looked at Nicole as if she might intervene, might talk sense into me. She stared back at him with undisguised contempt. You should pack a bag, Nicole said quietly. My sister has been more than generous. Don't make this ugly. Ethan stood up slowly, like a much older man. I never meant to hurt you, he said. But you did, I replied. And now we both have to live with that. He went to the bedroom and emerged 20 minutes later with a duffel bag and his laptop case. At the door, he turned back. For what it's worth, I did love you. Maybe I still do. If this is what your love looks like, I said quietly, I'm better off without it. After he left, Nicole and I sat in silence. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I just felt exhausted. You did the right thing, Nicole said. Then why does it hurt so much? Because you loved him. Because you trusted him. Because grieving what you thought you had is painful even when you know it wasn't real. I looked around the apartment. Our apartment, my apartment now. Everything was the same, but everything was different. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. Ethan's attorney just called. They want to negotiate. This is good. This means you have leverage. Well done. Well done. As if destroying my marriage was an accomplishment. But maybe it was. Maybe knowing when to fight, when to protect yourself, when to stop accepting less than you deserve, maybe that was its own kind of accomplishment. What happens next?
Nicole asked.
Court on Friday, I said. Then negotiations. Then, I don't know. Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone's wife. You're going to be okay, Nicole said firmly. Better than okay. I wanted to believe her. Sitting there in the ruins of my marriage, my wrists still aching, my heart still breaking, I wanted desperately to believe that this pain had a purpose. That fighting back was worth it. That my signature on those legal documents was the beginning of something instead of just the end. Outside, the autumn sun was setting over Boston, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful and finite like everything else. Tomorrow, I'd face Ethan in court. Tomorrow, I'd start the real battle for what was mine. But tonight, I let myself grieve. For the marriage that never really existed. For the man I'd loved who turned out to be someone else entirely. For the naive woman who'd signed papers without reading them, who'd trusted without question, who'd made herself small because she thought that's what love required. That woman was gone now. And in her place was someone harder, wiser, and ready to fight. Ethan had chosen another woman over me at the hospital. But my signature on the legal documents was about to end his game. And this time I was going to make sure I got everything I was owed. Friday morning arrived cold and gray, November wind rattling the windows of my apartment. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying the upcoming court hearing on an endless loop. Nicole had stayed with me Thursday night, and now she sat across from me at the kitchen table, watching me push scrambled eggs around my plate with my fork. "You need to eat something," she said gently. "It's going to be a long day." I managed a few bites, more to reassure her than because I had any appetite. At 8 a.m., we drove downtown to the Suffolk County Courthouse, an imposing granite building that seemed designed to make you feel small and insignificant. Jenna met us in the hallway outside the courtroom, looking impeccable in a black suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," I lied. "Good. Here's what's going to happen. This is just a preliminary hearing. The judge will review our emergency motion and hear arguments from both sides. Ethan's attorney is going to argue that you're being vindictive and trying to sabotage a legitimate business deal. We're going to argue that you're simply protecting your legal ownership stake. Keep your expression neutral. Don't react to anything Ethan or his lawyer says, and let me do all the talking." Will I have to speak? Probably not today, but be prepared just in case. We entered the courtroom, and my stomach dropped when I saw Ethan already seated at the defendant's table with his attorney, a sharp-featured man in his 50s wearing a suit that screamed expensive. Ethan looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his face drawn and pale. When he saw me, something flickered across his expression, regret, maybe, or anger. I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't care anymore. Judge Patricia Walsh entered, and we all stood. She was a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair and the kind of penetrating gaze that suggested she'd heard every lie and excuse 1,000 times before. "Please be seated," she said, settling into her chair and opening the file before her. "I've reviewed the emergency motion filed by Mrs. Patterson. Mr. Brennan, you're representing Mr. Patterson?" Ethan's attorney stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Thomas Brennan of Brennan, Wells and Associates." "And you're Miss Foster, representing Mrs. Patterson?" Jenna stood smoothly. "Yes, Your Honor. Jenna Foster of Foster and Associates." Judge Walsh studied the papers before her. "This is quite a situation. Mrs. Patterson is claiming a 50% ownership stake in Nexus Solutions and seeking to halt a pending investment deal pending resolution of the ownership dispute. Mr. Brennan, your position?" Thomas Brennan stood again, all polished confidence. "Your Honor, this motion is nothing more than a vindictive attempt by Mrs. Patterson to sabotage her husband's business success. While it's true that she signed incorporation documents 5 years ago, she has been a completely passive investor with no involvement in the company's operations or decision-making. The revised partnership agreement that Mr. Patterson has been operating under reflects the reality of active versus passive ownership. Mrs. Patterson contributed no capital, provides no services, and has shown no interest in the business until now, when there's money to be had." I felt my jaw clench, but Jenna's hand touched my arm in warning. "Stay calm." Furthermore, Brennan continued, "the timing of this motion is highly suspect. Mrs. Patterson filed it mere days before the closing of a $20 million investment deal that Mr. Patterson and his partner have spent 5 years building. This is clearly an attempt to extract a settlement under duress, threatening to destroy the deal unless she receives an outsized share of the proceeds." Judge Walsh turned to Jenna. "Miss Foster, your response?" Jenna stood, and her voice was clear and firm. "Your Honor, with respect to Mr. Brennan's characterization, the facts tell a different story. Mrs. Patterson didn't sign incorporation documents. She signed a legal partnership agreement that explicitly grants her 50% ownership with equal voting rights and equal claim to all business assets and revenues. This isn't ambiguous language. It's a binding legal contract." She walked forward and placed documents on the judge's bench. "These are the original incorporation papers, signed by both parties 5 years ago. Your Honor will note that they require unanimous consent for any modification to the ownership structure. Mr. Patterson cannot unilaterally revise this agreement to reduce his wife's stake." "What about the claim that Mrs. Patterson has been a passive investor?" Judge Walsh asked. "Your Honor, The original agreement makes no distinction between active and passive ownership. Mrs. Patterson's signature on that agreement gave her full ownership rights regardless of her level of operational involvement. Moreover, the suggestion that she contributed nothing is patently false. During the 5 years Nexus Solutions has been operating, it has taken minimal profit distributions. The company has been sustained by the marital income that came primarily from Mrs. Patterson, who earned significantly more than her husband throughout the marriage. Jenna placed another set of documents on the bench. Tax returns for the past 5 years, Your Honor. You'll see that Mrs. Patterson's income has consistently been 60 to 70% of the household total. She has been, in effect, subsidizing the business by supporting her husband while he drew a modest salary and reinvested profits. To now claim she's a passive investor who contributed nothing is both legally incorrect and factually dishonest. I watched Ethan's face as Jenna spoke. He was staring at the table, his jaw tight. As for the timing, Jenna continued, Mrs. Patterson only learned of her husband's affair and his attempt to defraud her of her rightful share days ago. She has acted with appropriate speed to protect her interests. The fact that this coincides with the closing of the investment deal is unfortunate, but not vindictive. It's simply Mrs. Patterson refusing to be victimized. Judge Walsh leaned back in her chair. Mr. Brennan, do you dispute that the original partnership agreement requires unanimous consent for ownership modifications? Brennan stood reluctantly. No, Your Honor, but... And do you have any evidence that Mrs. Patterson consented to the revised agreement reducing her ownership stake? The consent was implied, Your Honor. She never objected to the revised structure, never participated in business operations, never. Implied consent doesn't modify a written contract, Counselor. You know that. Judge Walsh looked at the papers again. What's the status of this investment deal? It was scheduled to close next Friday, Your Honor, Brennan said. But the investors are now threatening to withdraw due to the ownership dispute. Ms. Foster, what is your client seeking? Jenna glanced at me, then back to the judge. Mrs. Patterson wants her 50% ownership stake recognized and protected in the investment deal. She's not trying to block the deal. She simply wants to ensure that any proceeds are distributed according to the legal ownership structure, not a fraudulent revised agreement. Judge Walsh was quiet for a moment, studying both attorneys. Then she looked directly at me. Mrs. Patterson, please stand. My heart jumped. I stood on shaky legs, Nicole's hand briefly squeezing mine in support. Mrs. Patterson, do you understand that if I grant this motion, there's a real possibility the investors will walk away? That the deal your husband has spent 5 years building could collapse? I met her eyes. Yes, Your Honor, I understand that. And you're willing to accept that consequence. I thought about Ethan sending Vanessa to the hospital, about the emails planning to leave me, about the revised agreement designed to steal millions from me. Your Honor, I didn't create this situation. I signed a legal agreement 5 years ago in good faith. My husband is the one who tried to change the terms without my knowledge or consent. If the investors walk away, it's because my husband presented them with a fraudulent ownership structure. That's his responsibility, not mine. Something flickered in Judge Walsh's eyes. Approval, maybe. You may be seated. She turned to both attorneys. Here's my ruling. The original partnership agreement is clear and binding. Mrs. Patterson's 50% ownership stake is hereby recognized by this court. Mr. Patterson is prohibited from finalizing any investment deal or distribution of business assets until the parties reach a settlement agreement regarding the marital estate and business ownership, or until this matter is resolved through trial. Brennan started to object, but Judge Walsh cut him off. Furthermore, I'm ordering both parties to participate in mediation within the next 10 days. You will attempt to reach a settlement on the business ownership, the investment deal, and the broader divorce proceedings. If you cannot reach an agreement, we'll proceed to trial. But gentlemen and ladies, I suggest you settle this. A trial will be expensive, time-consuming, and will almost certainly cause the investment deal to collapse entirely. Am I clear? Yes, Your Honor, both attorneys said in unison. Good. My clerk will schedule the mediation. In the meantime, the existing ownership structure stands, and Mr. Patterson is ordered to provide full financial disclosure to Mrs. Patterson regarding Nexus Solutions and all marital assets within 7 days. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. As everyone stood, I felt my knees go weak. Jenna immediately turned to me, a rare smile on her face. You did beautifully. That was exactly the ruling we needed. Across the aisle, Ethan was in heated conversation with his attorney. I could see Brennan shaking his head, his expression grim. Nicole hugged me carefully, mindful of my cast. You won, Mayor. You actually won. This is just the beginning, Jenna cautioned. Now comes the hard part, negotiation. But you're in a very strong position. As we left the courtroom, I caught Ethan's eye. He looked devastated, like a man watching his dreams implode. Part of me, a small, stupid part, wanted to feel sorry for him. But then I remembered that night in the hospital. The texts he'd sent while I waited for surgery. The way he'd lied to my face. And I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. In the hallway, Thomas Brennan approached us, his expression carefully neutral. Ms. Foster, perhaps our clients could speak privately? With counsel present, of course. Jenna looked at me questioningly. I nodded. We found an empty conference room. Jenna, me, Nicole, Ethan, and Brennan. The silence was suffocating. My client would like to make an offer, Brennan began. To settle this quickly and avoid further litigation. We're listening, Jenna said. Brennan pulled out a folder. Mr. Patterson is willing to offer Mrs. Patterson a lump sum payment of $1.5 million in exchange for her relinquishing all claims to Nexus Solutions and agreeing to the revised ownership structure. Additionally, she would receive the marital apartment and half of all other marital assets. Mr. Patterson believes this is a generous offer given that Mrs. Patterson has contributed nothing to the business operations. Jenna didn't even open the folder. That's insulting. Mrs. Patterson is legally entitled to 50% of the business, which, based on the pending investment deal, is worth $4 million at minimum. Your offer is less than 40% of her legal entitlement. The deal hasn't closed yet, Brennan countered. There's no guarantee it will close, especially with this litigation hanging over it. Mrs. Patterson would be wise to take a certain $1.5 million rather than gambling on a deal that might never happen. Or, Jenna said coolly, the deal closes with Mrs. Patterson's ownership stake properly recognized, and she receives her full $4 million plus her share of all other marital assets, which, according to our preliminary calculations, includes approximately $2.5 million in additional assets, the apartment, savings, retirement accounts, and company cash reserves. I watched Ethan's face go pale. That would be $6.5 million total, he said hoarsely. Approximately, yes. That's what you owe her based on your legal obligations and your marital assets. Jenna's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. Now, we're willing to be reasonable. We understand that liquidity is an issue before the deal closes. So, here's our counteroffer. She pulled out her own folder. Mrs. Patterson receives her full 50% of Mr. Patterson's share of Nexus Solutions, $4 million when the deal closes. She receives the marital apartment, which is titled primarily in her name anyway. She receives $500,000 in cash from existing business reserves to be paid within 30 days. And Mr. Patterson assumes responsibility for all marital debts. In exchange, Mrs. Patterson agrees to cooperate with closing the investment deal and waives claims to Mr. Patterson's retirement accounts and future business earnings beyond the current deal. Brennan started to respond, but Ethan cut him off. Can I speak to Meredith alone? He asked, his voice cracking.
Please.
Just 5 minutes. Jenna looked at me. I hesitated, then nodded. The attorneys and Nicole left, though I knew they were waiting just outside the door. Ethan and I sat across from each other, a conference table between us that might as well have been an ocean. Meredith, he said quietly, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But $4.5 million plus the apartment? That would leave me with less than $4 million after taxes. I'd be starting over with almost nothing. You'd be starting over with more than most people see in a lifetime, I said. And with Vanessa, right? Isn't that what you wanted? He flinched. That's over. I ended it after you filed the motion. How convenient. I mean it. I realized I was throwing away 12 years for someone I barely knew. I was stupid, Meredith. I was scared about getting older, about whether I'd actually succeed, and she made me feel young and impressive, and he stopped, seeing my expression. That's not an excuse. There is no excuse. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I don't care if you're sorry, Ethan. I care about what's legally mine. Is that really all this is about? Money. I looked at him, this man I'd spent 12 years with, and tried to find any remnant of the person I'd loved. No, I said finally. It's about respect. It's about not letting you steal from me just because you think I'm too weak or too trusting to fight back. You wrote in an email that I never fight about anything, that I'd just accept whatever you decided to do. And you were right, the old me would have. The old me would have cried and begged you to stay, and probably settled for whatever scraps you offered. I stood up, my cast heavy at my side. But that woman died in the hospital the night you chose Vanessa over me. The woman sitting here now knows exactly what she's worth, legally and personally. And I'm not settling for less. Meredith, please. Here's what's going to happen, I interrupted. You're going to accept Jenna's offer, or we're going to trial. And if we go to trial, I will introduce every email, every hotel receipt, every piece of evidence of your affair and your attempted fraud. I will make sure the investors know exactly what kind of man they're doing business with. And maybe the deal survives that, but probably it doesn't. Either way, you'll still owe me what's legally mine, but you'll have spent hundreds of thousands in legal fees and destroyed any goodwill with Quantum Ventures. Ethan stared at me like I was a stranger. What happened to you? You happened to me. You broke my wrist, broke my trust, and tried to break my spirit. But I'm still here. And I'm not going to let you take anything else from me. I walked to the door and opened it. Jenna, Nicole, and Brennan were in the hallway, clearly waiting. We're done talking, I said to Jenna. Make it clear to Mr. Brennan that my offer is non-negotiable. He has 72 hours to accept, or we proceed with full litigation. Jenna's smile was sharp and approving. Understood. The next 72 hours were excruciating. I went back to work on Monday, trying to type one-handed and explain to curious coworkers why I was wearing a cast. I smiled and said it was just a slip on wet pavement, nothing dramatic. I didn't mention that my marriage was ending or that I was fighting for millions of dollars. Tuesday afternoon, Jenna called. They accepted the offer, she said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Every term. Ethan's attorney called this morning. They're ready to sign the settlement agreement. I sat down heavily in my office chair, my legs suddenly weak. They accepted everything? Everything. $4 million from the business deal, the apartment, $500,000 in cash, and he assumes all marital debts. We'll finalize the paperwork this week, and as soon as the investment deal closes, you'll receive your payment. Oh my God. Meredith, you should be very proud. You fought for yourself and you won. Not many people have the courage to do what you did. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at the Boston skyline outside my window. I'd won. After everything, the affair, the lies, the attempted fraud, I'd actually won. So why did I feel so empty? That night, I called Nicole and told her the news. Mare, that's incredible. We need to celebrate. I don't feel like celebrating, I admitted. I feel tired. That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline for 2 weeks. Once everything settles, you'll feel better. I wanted to believe her. The settlement was finalized on Thursday. I sat in Jenna's conference room and signed my name, my signature, the same one that had started all of this, on page after page of legal documents. Ethan was in a different room with his attorney, signing his copies. When it was done, Jenna shook my hand formally. Congratulations, Meredith. You're officially a wealthy woman. How long until I actually see the money? The $500,000 cash payment will be transferred to your account within 30 days, per the agreement. The $4 million from the business deal should come through 60 to 90 days after closing, which is scheduled for December 15th. So probably February or March. And the apartment? It's yours. Ethan has already moved out permanently. He's signed over his interest as part of the settlement. The deed will be updated within a few weeks. I walked out of Jenna's office and into the cold November afternoon feeling unmoored. I'd won everything I was legally entitled to, but I'd also lost my marriage, my trust, my naive belief that love was enough. Was it worth it? The answer came slowly over the next few weeks. As Thanksgiving approached and I spent the holiday with Nicole's family, watching her kids play and her husband smile at her with genuine affection. As I started physical therapy for my wrist and slowly regained function, the pins and plates a permanent reminder of that night in the hospital. As I walked through my apartment now, and started removing traces of Ethan, reclaiming the space as my own. The investment deal closed on December 15th, 2 days before Christmas. Quantum Ventures wired $20 million to Nexus Solutions, and according to the settlement agreement, my share was immediately segregated into an escrow account pending final distribution. Ethan texted me, one of the few communications we'd had since signing the settlement. Deal closed. Merry Christmas.
I didn't respond.
On New Year's Eve, Nicole convinced me to go to a party with her friends. I didn't want to go, but she insisted I needed to stop hiding in my apartment. The party was in Cambridge, full of academics and professionals, wine and cheese, and conversations about things that felt refreshingly far removed from my own drama. I was talking to a history professor about Boston architecture when I noticed someone across the room. A woman in her 30s, tall and confident, laughing at something her companion said. It took me a moment to recognize her without the yoga pants and messy bun. Vanessa. She saw me at the same moment, and her face went pale. She said something to her companion and started moving toward the exit. "Excuse me," I said to the professor, and before I could think better of it, I followed her into the hallway. "Wait," I called out. She stopped, turning slowly. Up close, she looked different, less polished, more uncertain. "Mrs. Patterson, I didn't know you'd be here." "Meredith," I said. "And I didn't know you'd be here either." We stood in the hallway, the party noise muffled behind the closed door, and studied each other. She was the woman my husband had chosen over me. The woman he'd been with while I lay in a hospital bed. The woman who'd represented everything wrong with my marriage. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I knew he was married, and I convinced myself it didn't matter because he said you were getting divorced anyway. That was wrong of me. I could have said something cutting. Something that would make her feel as small as I'd felt that night in the ER. Instead, I said, he lied to you too. About a lot of things, probably. Including me." She nodded slowly. "I figured that out. After everything exploded and he called me crying about the settlement, saying you'd taken everything from him." She laughed bitterly. "He made you sound like some kind of vindictive monster. But then I thought about that night at the hospital when he sent me to check on you instead of coming himself. What kind of monster has to have surgery alone because her husband can't be bothered? He told you I took everything from him? He said you got $4 million and the apartment and left him with barely enough to live on. He made it sound like you were punishing him for one mistake. I should have been angry, but I was just tired. I got what I was legally entitled to as a 50% owner of his business and the primary earner in our marriage. He tried to defraud me out of it by creating a fake ownership agreement and sleeping with you while I recovered from surgery. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of choices." Vanessa looked at the floor. "He told me you were just roommates at that point, that you barely talked, hadn't been intimate in over a year, that you knew about me and didn't care." "We had sex 3 weeks before my accident," I said bluntly. "We had dinner together every night. I had no idea you existed until you showed up at the hospital." "Jesus." She shook her head. "I'm an idiot." "No, you're human. He lied to both of us. The difference is I was married to him for 12 years. You just dated a liar for 8 months." We stood there in silence for a moment, two women connected by the same dishonest man. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Your wrist?" I held up my hand. The cast was off now, replaced by a removable brace. "It's healing. Physical therapy 3 times a week. They say I'll have about 90% function eventually. That's good. I'm glad. She hesitated. For what it's worth, when I saw you that night in the hospital, you looked so scared and hurt, and I felt sick about what we'd been doing. I broke it off with him a few days later. Before the lawsuit, before everything. I just couldn't look at myself anymore.
Good, I said.
You deserve better than being someone's secret.
So do you, she replied.
We said awkward goodbyes, and I watched her leave before going back into the party. Nicole found me a few minutes later. Was that her? The mistress?
Yeah.
Did you punch her? Please tell me you punched her.
I laughed. No.
We just talked. She's not the villain in this story, Nick. She was just another person Ethan lied to. You're way more evolved than me, Nicole said. I would have punched her. As midnight approached, I found myself on the apartment's balcony, watching fireworks bloom over Boston Harbor. Around me, people were kissing and celebrating, welcoming 2026 with hope and joy. I thought about where I'd been a year ago, married, financially dependent, trusting. I'd had security and routine, and the comfortable illusion of a happy marriage. Now I had a healing wrist, pending millions of dollars, an apartment in my own name, and absolutely no idea what came next. It should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something like freedom. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Happy New Year. I hope you find someone who deserves you.
E.
I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Ethan had had 12 years to be someone who deserved me. He'd chosen a different path. Now, it was my turn to choose. February brought the final payment, $4 million, minus taxes and fees, leaving me with approximately $2.8 million in liquid assets. Combined with the $500,000 cash payment and the apartment, my net worth had gone from essentially zero to over $3.5 million in 4 months. I sat in my financial advisor's office, looking at the numbers on the screen, and felt surreal. So, what do you want to do with this? She asked. Investments? Real estate? We have a lot of options. I thought about Ethan, about how his pursuit of wealth and success had corrupted everything good in his life. How he'd sacrificed his marriage, his integrity, his humanity on the altar of a business deal. I want to do something meaningful with it, I said slowly. Not just invest it and watch it grow. Something that matters. Over the next few months, I developed a plan. I'd keep enough invested to ensure my financial security, maybe $2 million in diversified index funds. But the rest, I'd use to start a foundation supporting women leaving difficult marriages. Legal fees, housing assistance, job training, all the things that make it possible to leave when you feel trapped. I'd call it the Patricia Foundation, after my grandmother whose inheritance had given me the down payment on my apartment. The apartment that had ultimately given me the leverage to fight back. In March, I ran into Ryan, Ethan's business partner, at a coffee shop near my office. He saw me and hesitated, clearly debating whether to acknowledge me. Meredith, he said finally, approaching my table. How are you? I'm well. You? Good. Busy. The deal with Quantum Ventures has been interesting. He sat down uninvited. Listen, I owe you an apology. I knew about the revised partnership agreement. Ethan showed it to me and I didn't question it. I should have known you hadn't agreed to reduce your stake. I should have said something. Why didn't you? He looked uncomfortable. Honestly? Because it benefited me too. If your stake was reduced, mine stayed proportionally larger. It was selfish and wrong, and I'm sorry. I appreciate that, I said. And surprisingly, I meant it. For what it's worth, Ethan is miserable. He rented this tiny apartment in Allston, drives a used car, lives like a grad student. He keeps saying you destroyed his life. I didn't destroy anything. I just refused to let him destroy mine. Ryan nodded slowly.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that.
I'm also starting to see that I've been enabling my best friend's worst impulses for years.
So I'm sorry.
To you, and to my own wife, who had to watch me defend indefensible behavior. After he left, I sat in the coffee shop and thought about forgiveness. about whether I owed it to anyone, about whether I owed it to myself. I hadn't forgiven Ethan. Maybe I never would. But I was no longer angry. I was just done. June brought warm weather and my last physical therapy appointment. My wrist would never be exactly the same. There was residual stiffness, occasional pain when it rained, but I had full function back. I could type, drive, live independently. The pins and plates were permanent. I'd carry them for the rest of my life, a metallic reminder of that night in the hospital when everything changed. But I'd also carry something else, the knowledge that I'd fought for myself. That when it mattered most, I hadn't accepted less than I deserved. In July, the divorce was finalized. Ethan and I stood in family court, signed the final papers, and walked out as legally separate people.
We didn't speak.
There was nothing left to say. I went home to my apartment, my beautiful Brookline apartment with its view of the city I loved, and opened a bottle of wine. Nicole came over, and we sat on the balcony as the sun set over Boston. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said. And I meant it. A year after that night in the emergency room, I stood in front of a small gathering at the Patricia Foundation's opening event. My wrist still ached occasionally, especially when I was nervous, but the brace was gone. Just a thin scar remained, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. I started this foundation because of a night when I felt completely alone and powerless. I told the group of donors and supporters. I just learned I needed surgery, and the person who promised to be there for me, in sickness and in health, chose someone else. But that night also taught me something crucial. You're never as powerless as you think you are. Even when you're scared and hurt and broken, you have choices. You have strength you don't know about until you need it. I looked around the room, at the faces watching me. Nicole was there, beaming with pride. Jenna Foster was there, her sharp eyes approving. Even Charles, the forensic accountant, had come to show support. This foundation exists to help women who are where I was, trapped in marriages that hurt them, unsure if they can survive on their own, afraid to fight for what's legally theirs. We're going to provide legal support, financial education, housing assistance, and most importantly, the knowledge that you don't have to accept less than you deserve. The applause was genuine, warm. After the speeches, as people mingled and talked, a young woman approached me hesitantly. "Mrs. Patterson, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course. And please call me Meredith." She was maybe 25, with nervous eyes and a determined set to her jaw. "I just wanted to say thank you. I read about your case in the news, about how you fought back. I'm going through something similar. My husband controls all our money, tells me I couldn't survive without him. But reading about you made me realize that's a lie. So I've been saving money secretly, and I'm planning to leave. I just wanted you to know that your story mattered." It gave me courage. I felt tears sting my eyes. "You're going to be okay. More than okay. You're going to be free." After she left, I stood on the balcony of the event space, looking out at Boston's lights. Somewhere in this city, Ethan was living his new life. Probably still bitter, still claiming I destroyed him, still unable to see that he destroyed himself. I didn't wish him harm. I didn't wish him anything. He was simply irrelevant to my life now. My phone buzzed. A text from Nicole. "Proud of you, sis. Grandma Patricia would be too." I smiled and looked down at my wrist, at the faint scar where they'd cut me open to insert pins and plates. At the place where I'd broken, and then healed stronger than before. Ethan had chosen another woman over me at the hospital, thinking I was too weak, too trusting, too broken to fight back. But my signature on those legal documents had ended his game. And my signature on the Patricia Foundation paperwork was beginning something new. Not just for me. For every woman who'd ever felt powerless and alone, who'd ever wondered if she was strong enough to fight for herself. The answer was always yes. You were always strong enough. You just had to be brave enough to prove it.